Hi everyone. Sorry, I'm just getting my screen sorted. There we go. Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's session on BigHand Doc ID. So today is an introduction to our Doc ID product, which we haven't done for a while. So thank you everyone for joining us to learn more about that. Today we're recording the session and we're going to be sending that out later. I've had a couple of messages saying people can't make this time, so they're going to catch up another time. So keep an eye out for that email and you can send it to anyone who was unable to make this time today. Also, if you could let me know that you can hear me and see Judy's screen, which is a Word document, if you can type into the chat or the questions box just before we get started and let me know, that would be great. And I think that's it in the way of introduction for today's session. Just while I wait for someone to let me know that everything's set up correctly, I will tell you that we're going to ILTA in August, and any one of you that's joining ILTA this year, we're having some sessions that Judy will be hosting. We have 7 sessions throughout the show, so emails will be coming out to you about that. So if you're at ILTA, then definitely stop by, and I will tell you more about that on all of our webinars from now until then. And it looks like we're all set up correctly, Judy. So are you there?
Great. I sure am.
Awesome. Thank you.
All righty. So everyone, we're talking about BigHand Doc ID. BigHand Doc ID is designed to work with document management systems. The ones that we support are iManage all the way through iManage 10, ND Office, OpenText, and WorldDocs. And so I'll just kind of state, which is probably the obvious to all of you or most of you, and that is a Doc ID is basically the unique document number that's placed in the footer of the document. The Doc ID can be more than the document number, but usually at a minimum, it's a way of tracing this document back to, so you can access it again, so you can retrieve it from your document management system. So I have a sample document open. I have page numbers in the footer, and just because I want to illustrate how Doc ID does not impact information you already have in the footer. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a page number on this page as well, just to make that easier for us. So this document has not been saved. If you look at the title bar, it's document 3. Okay, so now I'm going to save it. So the system I'm using on my machine today is iManage, but hopefully one of the DMSs that you're using, you've heard me list, iManage, NetDocuments, OpenText, and WorldDocs. You will save the document as you always do. So, how you save it and profile it, that doesn't change. But then what happens at save will depend on how you have Doc ID configured. So there is a configuration file, a utility that allows you to administratively set up Doc ID. So that way it knows what you want to happen when the user clicks save. And I will show you that admin utility. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and click save. And my Doc ID is set up so that it runs automatically at the point the user saves the document. It is set up to show the client number, the matter number, the document number, and the version number. And you see that right here. It's set up to place it in the bottom left corner of every page. And whatever font this is, it looks like Arial, and whatever size it is. All of that is part of the Doc ID configuration. Doc ID can be set up to behave differently. We don't encounter this too much, but there was a time when firms didn't want Doc ID to run automatically. They wanted the user to initiate it. Well, after time, people began to see, yeah, most documents should have it, so it should run automatically. But at this point, now as a user, I see that it is run automatically. It's showing up on every page, and I might want to change it, okay? So I'm going to change the view of my document just so we can see many pages at once to make that kind of easier for us. We see that we have it on several pages. That's page 1 there. And let's say I don't like having the Doc ID on every page. So I might go to the Doc ID ribbon, and I might specify that I want it on the first page only. And you can see now it's only on that page, only on the first page. It's absent from the other pages. or I may want to skip the first page. I may want to go back to every page. I may want the last page only, which is a common setting, or I might want end of document. Okay, so last page only, it's only on the last page, it is in the footer, whereas end of document takes it out of the footer and places it below the last line of text. Okay, so whatever your preference is, you can even use the add insertion point option to insert it on a particular page, right? So on one particular page of the document that you want to have it show in, or in the body of the document. Now, if I don't want the doc ID at all in my document, I'm back at the every page, I can choose no doc ID, okay? So this prevents me from having to go in the footer and make these adjustments on my own. And then there's also the setting that says print without doc ID. So if I want it here in my electronic copy, but I don't want it on the hard copy, I can click print without doc ID, and it will print the document at that point. Now, before I go further, the next thing I want to do is to show you how to control the information that shows up in the doc ID from the end user standpoint, and then we'll talk about how you set it up administratively. But Laura, do we have any questions that I should take care of?
Let me see. No questions at the moment.
All righty. So we've talked about these settings here, but let's go to the button that says BigHand Doc ID options. And this is where, as a user, I can change maybe the information that's within the Doc ID. I can also change the location here again. Or in this case, my firm has given me the ability to change the format. Okay, so first of all, know that whatever I have available here has been determined by my firm. So these are administrative settings where the firm decides how much control they're going to give the user. So the firm is giving me the ability to remove the client number and the matter number, let's say, if I don't want that. So I'm going to turn those off. I like the every page setting, so I will leave that on, but I could change it. I like the font, but I could change that as well. Maybe I will do something different with the font, just so we can see something a little different. Now, if I want these changes to apply to this document only, I would click Apply. If I want these changes to be permanent on all new documents that I save, I can choose Set as Default. And then from this point forward, it will know what I want. Okay, so I will just do Apply. Now, by the way, once I change my default settings, there's a button in there where I can always go back and say, no, I want to go back to the firm's default settings, okay? So, but you can see that my doc ID now is just showing the document number and version number, and it's on every page, okay? Now, if I save my document as a new version, or if I save it as a new document, my document ID will update automatically. So let's say I'm going to save it as a new version. Okay, now remember, your document management system might be a little different, the way you save it as a new version. That part doesn't matter. And so notice, because I didn't make that the default setting, it went back to the firm default. So that's one advantage of having it set as the default. So that way it doesn't run anew. But notice I have 0.2, so version 2 of the document. Okay. So whenever you save it as a new version or a new document, it will automatically update. Now, let's talk about how you set it up, how you configure Doc ID, where it gets its default settings from. So when the Doc ID is installed, there's an option to also install it with the Xml Editor. The Xml Editor is basically where the Doc ID settings are configured. The file that you edit is typically placed at the network level. So that way, as you make changes, it affects the entire, enterprise. Everyone will have these new Doc ID default settings. Or you could deploy the file if you want to, but you do have the option of placing it in a central location. So remember that Doc ID will support Word files and Excel files, okay? So that's what my configuration options include. So if I start at the top, it's letting me know which document management system it is set up to be used with. Under Word, this is where I can tell it, how I want it to behave in Word by default. Laura, any questions, by the way?
Still no questions at the moment.
No? Okay. So for Word, for instance, in this column, this is a list of all of the available variables. So when I Save a document, I have the option of including the library. I'm going to skip these three because these are more for if you're not using a document management system. So I have the option of including the library, the document number, the version number, the client number, the matter number, or the last save date. The default column tells you what my users are getting by default. They're getting the document number, the version number, the client number, the matter number. I'm allowing them to include allow change, the library, the document number, version number, client number, matter number, and last save. So they can add, these items or remove them, anything that is here. You can have multiple lines of information in your doc ID. I haven't seen that too often. I see that from time to time where firms want, maybe, I think I've seen the document number and version number on one line and the client matter number on another line. So you might do something like that. So I'll just do the library. So I might choose library and I might say add to line 2. Notice once I have something on a second line, I now have the option of having something else on the third line. So you can have, I don't think there's a limit on number of lines. You can just keep on going if you want to. But now it's giving me the ability to have that library there, which I'm going to remove. The other thing you can do here is you can set the prefix and suffix of each item. So for instance, this is telling me the order that I have the information in, and if there's any prefix or suffix characters with each one. So for instance, I have last saved at the end of the line, which means when one of my users selects this option, if they do, the last save date will go at the end of the line, and it will also have a hyphen in front of it. Let's say I want the date to be in another position. Maybe I want it to be at the beginning of the line or the middle of the line. That's what these position options do. So basically, you click at whatever element you want to change, okay, and then you use these arrows to position that item wherever you want it to go, okay. And then you use before and after to set a prefix or suffix. So I'm going to say I want the last save date enclosed in parentheses, okay. So that's that. Then at the bottom here, you have different format options and you have different paragraph formatting options, right? So let's say I want the doc ID to have a little space, a little padding with it. I might give it some space before. Or let's say I want the doc ID to show up, indented from the left margin. Then maybe I would set this to something, right? And that means I'm bringing it off the left margin. Or I could do the opposite. I want to bring it into the left margin, right? So into the white space of the margin, I can set a negative left indent, okay? So you have those options. Now setting these options up here will affect all documents, but you may not want to affect all documents, and I'll get to that. But at any rate, that's how this works, okay? Excel, similar. I won't take you through that, but it's basically the same process. Under global settings, under global address location, this is where you can tell it where you have placed your network configuration file. So I have mine on my local machine so I can fool around without messing up anybody else at BigHand. But here, if you're going to have it on the network, this is where you're going to tell it, where you place the network file. And then whether or not you want that print without doc ID option included on the ribbon. Under global settings for Word, this is where you can specify, which pages you want it to be located in. If you want the ribbon provided, that's a checkbox. You can enable or disable that. Let's come down here under style options. So style options allow you to decide how much flexibility you're going to give, how much flexibility you're going to have with the doc ID overall, okay? So if I choose firm default only, this means that the format of the doc ID, the font, the size, the paragraph formatting is only going to be controlled by this file, okay? My users will lose the ability, by the way, to change the font themselves if I do that, okay? If I choose stamp based on style, it means that it's going to look in the document and see if there's a style in the document, maybe coming from the template, and it will take its formatting from that style that lives in the document. If I say user configurable, there will be firm settings, okay, And I might have a style in the document as well, right? But ultimately, my users are going to have the final say on how the doc ID looks. So in terms of the font and the size. So having this checked is what gives the users those font choices in, that dialog box. So when I choose user configurable, I actually have the ability to have all three of these. You're always going to have a firm default. If I have a style in the document, it will acknowledge that. But if I have user configurable, then the user can override all of that with how they want the doc ID to look. Okay, then lastly, here is if you're using templates in your firm, and it doesn't have to be our product create, it could be maybe your own firm templates, you're using another product, and if you want the templates to dictate what the doc ID looks like, okay, not where it's positioned, and actually where it's positioned. So for instance, in this example, I have pleading. So let's just say, for whatever reason, in my pleading templates, I want it to only show up on the last page. So here I'm going to have the name of my pleading template or the folder where my pleading templates are stored. Maybe for my letter template, I don't want the doc ID to show up on the first page because I don't want it to compete with, a logo or something that's in the first page footer. So I might specify the location of my letter template and I might say skip first page, okay? So these are basically template-based, behavior that you can set up. Again, you have the ability to do, the similar things for Excel, okay? Under legacy removal, I'll just mention what this is. So when a firm comes to BigHand Doc ID, more often than not, maybe every time, they're coming from another product. They're coming from some other method they've used for putting their, document ID in their documents. So then when BigHand comes to play and it stamps documents, we don't want users to have documents with the same document number appearing twice in their footer. So with legacy removal, we're able to, as we stamp a document, look to see if there's already a stamp there, remove it so the user's only looking at one document ID. This typically requires some customization, typically about 2 hours. Sometimes we have firms who, have had so many different versions of a doc ID, we might have to look for several different indicators of a legacy doc ID in order to get rid of, the appropriate one. So this is something that's on a case-by-case basis if it's necessary. But we do have the ability to make sure the document only shows one doc ID. Laura, any questions?
Let's see. Yes, we have one. Will the options without a document management system, for a system Judy didn't mention, be shown today or a different session?
No, I'm not going to show the ones for without a document management system. It doesn't really change at all, except, you'd be saving it into Windows. But let me mention one thing. Doc ID will only work for systems that have a document management system or for systems that don't. It won't go back and forth and interchange. So the only thing that would be different here if I wasn't using a document management. So first I want to say when you're not using a document management system, you don't have to put anything in your templates or your documents ahead of time. Either way, we don't believe that you should have to have some magical code or bookmark in the documents. So you basically, all of the setup is the same, except, you wouldn't be using things like version number and client number. You'd be using these settings, document name, author name, or native author name are the settings that you would use.
Okay.
But if you're not using a document management system and you have additional questions, we can take that offline and give you a demo or talk about it with you. Anything else, Laura?
Not at the moment, no.
All righty. Well, everybody, that is really it for Doc ID.
Sorry, one other came through. Would
Okay.
Doc ID work for SharePoint?
It does not. So at the moment, just those 4 that I mentioned, iManage, NetDocs, OpenText, and WorldDocs, not for SharePoint at the moment.
Okay. and that is it now. Thank you.
All righty. So if other questions do come up, feel free to contact us. If you'd like, a personal demo or talk about your environment, do contact us, and we're happy to get back with you on that. Okay, but Laura, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so the recording will be coming out later today. And also, as I mentioned, if any of you are going to ILTA this year, which is in August in Maryland, Judy will be with us there, and we'll be doing morning and afternoon sessions where you can come along and see a demo of any of our document production products. If you're already a client, you can come along and see the latest features, latest releases of each of those, and obviously just catch up with Judy and the team. So, like I say, keep an eye out for our ILTA emails and social media posts. And otherwise, the recording will be coming out later today, and we will speak to you all again soon. Thank you.